Hello, my name is Gary Mansfield, and this is the Ministry of Arts podcast, where each week I'll be speaking to a different artist. Now let's begin by bagging these bongos.
Yeah, right. Crazy.
Hello, and welcome to episode 226. We've still got some episodes to come for the Kensington and Chelsea Art Week, which runs until the end of August. We have Baker and Borowski coming up next week, and 2 weeks after that it is Junior Tomlin, which was one of my favourites to record, I've got to tell you. And as mentioned, they're part of the Kensington and Chelsea Art Week and Art Trail series of podcasts, which promote and highlight the Kensington and Chelsea Art Trail, which has artwork scattered all across the borough of Kensington and Chelsea. It's a big borough, but don't worry, they've got their own art bus. But anyway, back to this week's episode. So today I'll be introducing you to Angry Dan. Angry Dan is a limmerist. Limmerist? Is it limmerist? Have I just made that word up? He's someone who writes limericks. If it's not a limmerist, it is now. Angry Dan is a limmerist and a muralist. His studio is just a couple of miles down the road from me in Walthamstow in East London, so we was able to record this in person. Oh, and I should mention, Angry Dan has a new show opening in Walthamstow from the 1st till the 28th of August. He'll also be relaunching his Trail of Limericks in the local area, the first time since 2020, but the main focus for the show will be a limerick writing competition, open to all ages, where the winner will be collaborating with Angry Dan on a unique print of their winning limerick design, in Dan's signature style. Lots of the runner-up entries will also be displayed in the gallery for the first 2 weeks of September. And as he said, it's open for all ages. So if you want to join in, or your children want to join in and you're in the local area, then go over to Instagram and have a look at Angry Dan's profile for more information. But to hear a whole lot about the man himself, come with me and join me in the studio of Angry Dan. Sometimes an artist comes across something that just works and it can go on forever. And yeah, I think that's what we're all trying to look for, isn't it?
I mean, yeah, and I think you have to take care. The money has to be sorted out, and if that's the way to do it, which for a lot of people is, then I think that's fine. But Damien has to have enough money, in my opinion.
Yeah,
he's got enough. But that's just, you know, I mean, there's something about the cherry blossom stuff that he does, for example. That you could put that in the same category, but for some reason, I feel like he finds it like finds a lot bit of peace painting those paintings. Do you know what I mean? It's a nice process. All the colours just dobbing around in the studio. So for me, that's more not forgivable, but like I understand why he does it.
Well, getting on to you,
right?
For someone that wouldn't know your work, how would you describe what you do?
I mean, I write limericks, which are those annoying little 5-line. Bouncy little poems. Oh,
I think they're far from annoying. Absolutely love a limerick.
I mean, some of the best ones are annoying, but as you hear enough of them, they definitely are annoying. But so I write those about literally anything that I want to write about. So it could be something that's happening in my personal life. It could be an interesting piece of news. It could be a scientific phenomenon. It could be someone from history. It could be literally anything I've seen while scrolling on the internet. That makes me want to have a perspective or an opinion on something, or make a joke out of something, and then I'll draw it with a symbolic object. And the way that I do it is with cartoony sort of text on the object, and that kind of gives it its visual identity. But basically, I write limericks non-stop.
And was you always an artist?
So I made music when I was younger.
Yeah.
I made a lot of electronic music, and then I started to write songs just for myself, like with piano or guitar. And then gradually the words became more significant to what I was doing there. And I realised, I would process feelings with writing songs and things like that.
Yeah.
And in the end, by about the age of 30, I was like, oh wow, I think the words is the most important thing now. Do you know what I mean?
And how long ago was that, if you don't mind me asking?
So the actual event was a friend's wedding. A friend asked me to do a reading for his wedding, and I was thinking, oh, should I read some funny lyrics to an ironic song, or Gary Barlow or something? Do you know, something just something that people would laugh at. Yeah. And then I had the idea of, I thought I'd just write something myself. Do you know what I mean? And I enjoyed the process so much, and the response was so good as well, and he was so happy, right? And everybody who was there was so, they were, you know, very positive about it. So after that, I was like, well, this is it now. Do you know what I mean? I'm that felt as good as or better than anything I'd done with music at that particular point.
Yeah, good. So did you have creativity in the home growing up?
Yeah, so music for sure. My brother really was the artist in our family growing up, and you know, kids sometimes get what's the word, pigeonholed, or they have to see themselves as different to the other siblings, sort of thing. So I was always really a bit more academic, I suppose. Although I did play music in my teens, but my brother was great at drawing, and then really good at painting in sort of sixth form sort of time. So he would, as a result of that, when he was doing his A levels, when I was about 15 or 14 or 16 or whatever, he was bringing home lots of different kinds of kind of imagery of Dali, Warhol, that sort of stuff, and that was really the first time that I'd looked at something like art and thought, oh wow, you know, I really like it. I didn't think about doing it really, but I just thought I really liked it. But I've always had that artistic sort of temperament where I've created, like I made music every day from the age of 16 till till I was maybe 30. Like it was my absolute obsession. Yeah. And some people would argue.
And was you earning from it?
Oh, I did make some money in the end. Yeah, I made music for adverts. My first big advert was a Weetabix advert.
Oh, nice.
I've just given the keyboard away to like a little 2-year-old girl who's my girlfriend's friend's kid, but it was made on like a £25 Casio keyboard. But I made a ton of music for adverts. But what I was going to say was that whereas what I do now is this kind of very specific sort of process where I know what I'm going to write about and I'm just seeing it through to this end result. You could argue that what I was doing with the music, as in going every day onto the computer to make something new and experimental, was probably more true to what it means to be an actual artist than what I do now. You could argue that. And
do you find the process of creating music is the same as creating an artwork or a poem?
I would say that the impetus to do it is the same. Yeah, for sure. Like that, you get up in the morning and it's got to be the first thing you want to do. But the actual process of doing what I do, though, it's kind of quite rigid, really. Do you know what I mean? I write this thing, and it's got to be in this flowing but very sort of very well defined structure. The words have to be for sure, and then I know how it visually has to look really colourful, central object, like a kid's done it, sort of thing. So actually, it's very, very different. If I was making music, then it would always just be never a time limit on what I was doing. Always just whatever I wanted it to sound like.
You said you try and make it like a kid's done it. So there's obviously an innocence to the way it looks. When people do that, I see it that they're making it for the everyman, and so everyone can associate with it.
So I never really drew from a very, very young age. I'm supposedly colourblind, so I didn't have any confidence in making visual art at all, hence being obsessed with music for that long. So when I started to draw, when I'd written a load of limericks and I needed to represent them visually, I started to draw, having not drawn from the age of sort of 7, where you just draw clouds with a line, and you just draw a sun, and you just draw a light bulb or whatever, in that really cartoony sort of way. So at that point, it wasn't for any other reason than that was as good as I could do it. That was literally the best I could do. Whereas now, having drawn lots and lots and lots, I find I have to rein it in a little bit and force myself to be a bit simpler, which is again fun.
But it works. Well, that's it. It works.
Yeah.
It works on a print, on a painting. It works on a mural. It no doubt works on the T-shirts that you were talking about before we started recording.
Yeah. Bulk. I mean, block colour. That's it, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, so easy to do as well. It's not. You're not like worried about the fade and whether it's gradual enough or something.
So do you still make music?
Yeah. So I
I
probably
can see instruments about, so but I mean on a regular basis.
I probably play music most days. I'll play some music. Last time I made some music on the computer was probably 2 weeks ago. Half the stuff I did was made for the actual adverts themselves.
Good.
So that was just a rush, right? They'd give you often a super tight time schedule. They'd say, you know, we need the track tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. sort of thing. So you'd just be Red Bull all night and then send it to them. And then, you know, then they'd say yes, and you'd just be like, great, that's a ton of money for for like
just going through some old tracks that you've created.
Well, no, make something new, right? The few times that happened, making something new, but that just feels great because you feel like you've just earned 3 months' money or whatever in the space of one night, and it just happens to have worked out great. But then the other stuff, like I'd made tons and tons of songs to try to make an album, which I never even really put anything of those songs out. Eventually, when some of those tracks got used on adverts, because I just have basically a library of stuff, and I'd sometimes send these to people who needed songs for some online advert or something. That just felt like, oh, at least finally I've got something back from it, because I spent so many years making this stuff. Do you know what I mean? I never got offered an advert that I felt like I had any moral problem with taking. Never got offered McDonald's. Never got offered Coca-Cola.
Yeah. And would you have taken it?
I mean, if the money was
it's going to be great. Isn't it?
Well, then what are you going to do?
Of course.
What are you going to do?
I'll make you completely. Well, when people have said to me about stuff like this, I've said to them, and I know it's quite an extreme, I've done so much worse for so much less. You know, like back in my old life, stuff I would have done for a few quid. So anything honest now, no matter what it's, well, I was going to say no matter what its morality, but there are limits. I
think with the thing that I'm doing now with the limericks, because it's like child facing and stuff, if Coca-Cola wanted me to write a limerick about Coca-Cola and do it in exactly my thing, I'd have to have a really, really good think about that. Yeah. And I think only if I had some responsibility, that I had a bigger responsibility than I do to my art to take care of, then I would have to say yes, obviously. But if it's just music that I've made and it's a project that I'm not really fussed about, and it's people can't really link it to this thing, or it doesn't devalue this thing that I'm doing now, then there'd be no question I'd do it. One really, really good cultural example of this, supposedly Super Free Animals were offered £1 million or $1 million for Hello Sunshine, which is that amazing opening track to I can't remember the name of the record now, but a beautiful, like really slow, it makes your hair stand on end the way it sounds. Coca-Cola offered them £1 million or $1 million for it. And they thought, oh, we can give the money to charity, like we can figure out a way to do this. Do you know what I mean? But in the end, they just thought, no, that song is
making a stance.
It's magic. It's not, you know, we feel a certain way when we hear that song. And if someone listens to that song and sees a Coca-Cola logo and feels that way about Coca-Cola because we've sold it for £1 million, then the whole thing is fucked. So. And
then people who know that story, that's only going to make that song even more valuable.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it didn't take that financial.
It would be tainted, without a doubt.
I come past one of yours on the way here, down, would it have been down Chingford Road? And it just said Browns Road.
Right, okay, yeah.
Was it Browns Road?
That was my first single mural commission for the council.
Oh, there you go.
Just a street sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, as I was coming down, obviously thinking about this conversation, and then just at the corner of my eye, I was going, that's fucking angry, don't I? Just I'm thinking. So that was pretty. How did that come about? Did you go to them?
So I did in 2019. Waltham Forest was the London Borough of Culture. So the council had a load of extra money and a load of extra impetus to invest in art stuff, and I applied through the little ward funding pots to do a load of small murals of my limerick stuff around in the area. Here. That street sign came a couple of years later, I think, when in 2019 Waltham Forest was London Borough of Culture, and there was a big impetus within the council to invest in local art and local artists and put some big kind of visually recognisable sort of projects in the local area. So I applied for a load of funding just for materials to paint a bunch of murals around here, and I got the funding for 9. So for about 6 months. I ran around and knocked on doors and found like little flat walls, and
nice.
over the course of that those few months, I painted my little kind of trail of limericks around here. When I'd finished that year's worth of mural painting, one of the local window galleries around here, which again is probably a Park Council funded thing, where people can just apply to put the stuff in the window. They gave me a slot in August in 2020, which obviously ended up being COVID lockdown nonsense. Yeah. So they gave me a slot in the window there. So what I did was combine the murals in the local area with this gallery show, painted, I think, 12 or 15 paintings to go in the window, but also on the gallery wall painted a map of the local area, with all of the murals on this map, and everybody who went round and found all these murals and took a photo and posted it on Instagram, they won a free print of their choice.
Oh, good. Superb.
So it was like this big kind of, a lot of work, big idea, like 18 months, I suppose, in it, putting it all together, but it came together. And then, from then I kind of have always been supported by the local area in a big way, whether it's the council or local businesses who are doing development stuff around here.
Well, I think that local councils are finally appreciating the value of little bits of culture, whereas
murals are perfect for that. Absolutely
exactly.
Perfect for it.
Because at the moment, especially at the moment, they're so underfunded that they're taking the funding away from the arts more or less before anything else.
Yeah. Because
it's seen as a little visual luxury. Yeah, it's ideal. Was that your first mural, or had you been doing murals before that?
So I painted in Shoreditch with Global Street Art, that organisation, down there. So I'd weirdly, with a bunch of postcards of my limericks when I was just drawing them small scale, I bumped into the boss, Lee Bofkin, who you probably will have met before, probably know. So he's the head of that company, who's now 30 or so employees, all putting out massive murals and creating loads of content and stuff. But I gave him a postcard randomly at some kind of drawing meet on Brick Lane, and he just said, "Do you want to come and paint this on a hoarding?" sort of thing. So that was my first mural down there, and then I painted sort of maybe 5 or 6 in the local area, all in Shoreditch over the winter, so over the next 5 or 6 months. And then the next year was 2019, and that was the Walthamstow project.
Yeah. So how did you feel taking it from the page, if you like, from the canvas, putting it onto a wall?
I must admit I had no idea what I was doing really. I'd never used spray paint. I didn't know anything about like paint pens or anything like that. So I turned up at the Global Street Art offices, with my rucksack, like, how do I do this? And they gave me some guy, very nice GSA employee, lovely Matt from Global Street Art with a camera. And although Matt doesn't really paint, obviously he watches that stuff go up all the time. And I was like, how do I do this bit?
So what was he just documenting?
He was filming, yeah. So the process of that day, I spent most of the day hungover, really, really anxious and worried that I was going to mess it up and that people were going to see this thing that looked like a piece of my work with it, but it was awful. Round the corner from Jealous Gallery, you had the same image as a print sort of thing. So for the whole day, I'd felt like I didn't know what I was doing. I felt bad. And then about 4 o'clock, I popped over the road to get a can of Foster's just to kind of to kind of ease the nerves. And I saw the piece from over the road. When you take a step back from a wall, it changes everything, obviously. Yeah. And at that point, I was like, "Oh no, it looks all right. Like it's going to work out," sort of thing. So that was the first experience of doing it, and it was really, really nerve-wracking.
And which one was that?
I painted there's an eye about imagining that you're swimming, imagining that the pool is a sky, and that's the one I painted for the first time.
And I know you've done many since then, but when that was complete, did you go, "Oh, this is where it's going to go"?
Straight away.
Brilliant.
Immediate on the way home. I think I posted the image on Instagram on the way home, and that always, because the photo of a mural always looks better than when you've just come away from it as well, because all you can see is mistakes when you finished a mural, because you're so close to it, obviously. So that post then sort of locked itself in my head. I had a shower. Obviously, you stink when you've been painting on the street. And got out of the shower and just kind of like read a few of the comments and stuff and looked at the photo again. And I was like, oh, you know, I just had that feeling like, oh, this is, and then I just straight away told Lee that I wanted to paint as much as possible. And I was like, give me another hoarding. Contacted Jealous and did the rooftop there, and then started to paint a bit more in other places, but not really. It was all pretty much as much as I could do straight away in Shoreditch.
So you've had a relationship with Jealous for some time.
Yes, I mean, I've had some bits in a couple of their shows, but mainly it was just that the rooftop thing, and I have one print with them.
I mean, how good is Dario?
Yeah, amazing. I mean, he's one of those, you'll see he's comparable, I guess, in some sort of ways to Lee Bofkin. He's one of those people who has such an enthusiasm for what they're doing, and he's full of ideas, and he sees so much happen all around him from so many different artists and so many different opportunities, things going on. When he has a conversation that's about your work to you, and it's only happened to me once for 20 minutes, 20 minutes at the back of the gallery there, he happened to be like, I saw this, let me tell you this, and he was just like going through ideas with me, and I left so energized. Great people to be associated with. You've got work in there at the moment? No, like I said, just the print, literally just the one single print with those guys, which just sells, a few pieces, maybe one or two a month or something.
Do you see yourself as a mural artist that also puts them onto canvas, or a canvas artist that puts them onto murals?
I mean, kind of all three, really. I guess firstly off, I'm a writer, obviously. That's the first thing that starts with everything. Most people see the murals, so there's that. But for myself, writing, illustrating, and then the mural stuff is like a really nice workout. Do you know what I mean? A really nice the antidote to being alone in this room all day. Should we put it that way? You go out, people come and have a chat with you or whatever. It forces me to meet new people as well. The people who tend to commission murals in anywhere, but in provincial towns or whatever you want to call it. You get to go to Manchester or Carlisle, or I'm hopefully going to Norfolk and Suffolk at some point this summer, and all of those relationships with the people there who make these things happen, they love it, and that kind of activity means that the murals, makes that more than worthwhile, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, I said a few years ago that I just really didn't think there was enough text-based art around.
I think there's a thing that people fall into with a lot of people just write a single word in a really, really amazing font, like they've got
benign, scary under the bridge.
Well, exactly, yeah, and that has the desired effect, doesn't it? When you first walk through, you're like, where am I?
It's fucking scary.
I mean, if you're a great sort of typeface designer, as Ben obviously has a talent for, then that's great, and I think that's a good way to go. But I would say that is more in line with the idea of putting letters up big on a wall, whereas what I'm doing is kind of I don't see myself really as, and I don't mean it, I'm not trying to separate myself from that in any sort of in any other way than just to say that my feeling is that I don't feel like I'm part of that. Do you know what I mean? I feel like I'm like a children's illustrator who sometimes goes and paints big walls. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Well, do you know Robert Montgomery?
I do.
Right. So Robert Montgomery is a poet.
Yeah. He's a writer. Yeah. For sure. I mean, obviously now he's installationised. Yeah. Whatever, you call it.
But he still describes himself as poet first.
Yeah.
Artist second.
I guess, I mean, he writes I write serious stuff too. I see him more as a poet than I do as anything else. Yeah. But then other people would see him as I see myself, as I said, I see myself almost split 50-50 between the writing and the visual stuff, and then the kind of mural stuff is an added bonus, I'd say.
Well, it was his work, Robert Montgomery. Yeah. When I said to you just now that I feel there should be more text-based art. I feel there should be more text-based art. I saw one of his artworks at the bottom of Bethnal Green Road. On the side of the pub, there was a big advertisement billboard, and it was one of his artworks. And I was underneath it and like sort of looked up and didn't realise it was his. And I've looked up at it and I was like, that's fucking beautiful.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. Some of his stuff is incredible. There's that one, Dead People.
I think it may have even been that.
Live inside of us as ghosts or something like that.
It was either that one or the one about the trees.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I do remember the one you talked about as well.
I can't remember which one it was, but it was one of those. And I sat across it and I was like, why aren't more artists doing this, or poets doing?
You've got to do it. I mean, I think you have to do it so well. Mine stuff is the colours maybe make it. I mean, I can be forgiven slightly more for. But
you're sorry to butt in.
Yeah, go on.
I know where you was going with that, but you're using a limerick, which, although I said from the start of this, I absolutely love a limerick. I presume that it is the basic form of a poem. Would that be correct?
I mean, obviously, a limerick it has a particular kind of meter. It has a particular line length. The first, the second, and the fifth line rhyme.
There you go.
The third and the fourth line rhyme. But no, there are so many different ways that poems are structured. So to say that it is the basic form of a poem, I would say is probably technically wrong, but
because it's got that beautiful flow, hasn't it?
Yeah, anapestic, I think they call it. That bounce, I think, is what gives it its charm. But something like a sonnet, for example, has a completely different. It doesn't bounce in threes; it bounces in twos.
Yeah.
For example, so there are so many different versions of it. It just happens to be one that, rather than a sonnet which comes from like 16th century Italy, or a haiku that comes from sort of, I don't know, Japanese dynasty sort of level culture that's been handed down from some kind of cultural kind of body or group of people that live on high. The limerick is something that's come from the people. It's folk, basically. It's a.
Has it come from Limerick?
Well, this is something that's obviously something that's been claimed by so many people over the years,
especially from Limerick.
I mean, it's a contentious issue, and I haven't been to Limerick yet, and I'd love to go and paint a limerick in Limerick for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
So I'm not about to say that I think it's a load of rubbish, but there are lots of people who would point out that limericks existed for a long, long time, far, far away from there. So would say, no, probably it's not the case. But it's not in my interest to start banging that drum, so I'm not going to bother.
But it's an obscure word that is it a meaning?
So there's just to say that name of the poem is named after the town is fair for sure, but it doesn't mean it's come from there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
So.
There's lots. So I did a radio show for Soho Radio a couple of years ago, and one of the main things that I tried to talk about in the show was this question, right? It was kind of a thread for the whole show, was why are they called limericks, sort of thing. And there are so many different people who have ideas about this, but one of the main ones, which seems to have been a good possible reason as to why, is that there is a way that it's sung somewhere over in the States, and between every time in the round people sing these limericks, they have this chorus that everybody in the pub or whatever around the campfire would all sing together to try to keep the tempo of this kind of group process going, and that would be talking about come down to Limerick town. So that is how the word possibly has latched on to the type of poem.
I love shit like that.
Me too. But I didn't get to answer the question properly. There's no real answer. As with everything that's folk, it's one of those things that you just have to
just grown.
You have to accept that you don't know. Loch Ness Monster, who made it up? Well, no one, because it's bloody real. That's why.
But yeah, it's a beautiful thing, isn't it? It's come from the ground up.
Exactly.
Which piece that you've created has got the strongest emotional connection?
Well, I do a lot of stuff about climate change, and I get very into that. It's obviously the big question of our time. Let's be honest. So the pale blue dot rainbow piece on the marshes here, and has been in lots of other places as well. That is something that I feel really connected to. But in terms of work that I've made, I mean, I absolutely love science. So anything science based I like. But I've written some kind of sad ones, or I've written stuff about dreaming that I feel particularly connected to. I feel like what I'm trying to do with the whole collection of limericks, in some ways, is to cover every single facet of my personality.
Yeah.
And then hopefully one day there'll be a book, and you can read through the book, and you get this massive kind of, you get this picture of who I am. Do you know what I mean?
Nice.
And there's nothing that's been left out from, you know, the kind of self-doubt to over-exuberance to, you know, maybe partying a bit too much, or being a bit of a nerd, you know, sort of self-proclaimed nerd or something, and really techie and really into music and really, you know, trying to be honest about how I feel about certain things.
Yeah.
So that's the general. I feel like a bigger connection to the whole thing, to the whole idea, maybe than to any individual piece.
Brilliant answer. You mentioned there about the rainbow pieces. You said it's at the Marshes, but you said it was somewhere else as well?
So I've painted it on 2 or 3 electrical boxes just around the country. There are these great kind of look projects where people can apply now, I think, through BT to paint electrical boxes.
I didn't know that.
They have an afford, or maybe it's it is BT, and you can apply for permission. So lots of people in smaller towns have started to do that, and you'll get an invite, you know, to say, oh, we've got, you know.
How cool is that? I wasn't aware of that.
It's amazing, right? They only started to formalise it recently because people were having a nightmare going through the process, because obviously BT notoriously will have an awful customer service or kind of front facing.
Well, people were graffitiing them anyway, weren't they?
Exactly.
So why not take ownership of the graffiti?
Yeah, I mean, just also somebody maybe who works in a studio close by who would really love to just go and spend 2 or 3 days painting the side of one of these boxes with one of their intricate designs. So yeah, I've done a couple on there. I did it massive in Spanish in Mexico.
Nice.
Last year, which was amazing, with my friend Toby Rosalfo, another artist who lives in Camden now, but I think he's part-time Camden, Mexico.
That great combination.
Camden and Mexico. Camden and Mexico City. And I've painted it, I think. I mean, it was a T-shirt for. It was a T-shirt for the Big Issue a while ago.
Brilliant.
It's been in loads of places.
Well, I love that it's not site specific.
Yeah.
It's able to be transient, if you like.
Well, I as a rule of thumb, I wouldn't paint one of these sort of full limericks in 2 places. I would definitely not in the same city, probably not in the same country, but I would paint it in a different country, I think, if there was a reason to paint it.
Yeah.
But with that, because it's climate change, because it's so simple, because it's just a rainbow, really. Like, no one's blown away by the composition or anything. It's just a bloody rainbow with a few words on, but it does the job so well. I feel like I could try to make that statement in a different way and fail, you know, every single time, or I could just paint that thing every time I get the chance. And that's kind of like the climate change thing. That may be job that people who are making art have got to do a job of. Yeah. So everyone has to do something about climate change, otherwise what are they doing? Do you know what I mean? So I feel like that's me doing that job, basically.
Nice. Good answer. If there was you and 5 other artists, past and present, what would your ideal group show be?
I feel like I need a little bit of time to answer that. I mean, who do I like? I mean, it's a very good question. It'd have to be people from history, so I don't offend anyone from the modern day. Obviously Basquiat. I mean, why not Picasso? Why wouldn't you put Picasso in the show? Dali. I mean, it's just going to be really obvious stuff now, isn't it? I mean, probably Warhol if he was going to be there. Why would you not have Andy Warhol in a room?
He is the most popular
answer. Is he? Fair enough. Probably Frida Kahlo, I guess.
Most popular woman.
Is it? Yeah.
But then, I mean, it's me saying it's the most popular answer. It's just they are the most influential people. So.
Yeah, I obviously pay attention to every documentary that comes on Amazon Prime, and I'll read every book, and I'll talk about every artist that comes up with mates, and I'll be on the internet all the time looking at stuff. But I'm not like I don't have a degree in art. I don't know that much about it. So, and then most of my work isn't about art. Like I don't really, I write about, science or whatever. I'm not some artist who's obsessed with art on that level where I'd
So
have
if
the
I
big-
would have
big-
said poets, would that have helped or
I
not?
don't really like poetry, Gary. Bit pretentious, really, isn't it?
Those people. If there was you and 5 other limerick writers,
What's his name? Spike Milligan would be the
he's brilliant.
would be the top, wouldn't he? Top of the tree.
And do you know what Spike Milligan had put on his headstone?
Oh, was it something like "I told you I was ill" or something?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Exactly that. And yeah, brilliant.
Oh, he's so funny, so funny. I've got his book downstairs, I think. Yeah, the limerick book. His limerick book. Yeah.
And if you wasn't an artist, what do you think you'd like to do?
Well, the next thing obviously would be music. I mean, but that's still art, isn't it? And then I'd love to make films. I have made a couple of films, but it's just it takes too long and
Do you
and stuff.
edit and produce?
I do, yeah. I'm kind of like, I'm pretty, timeline editing with film and music is pretty much the same thing. So from cutting my teeth with, just self-taught, being a musician and stuff, editing film now is the same thing.
Yeah.
I think you're lucky enough sometimes to be exposed to certain things, like making music at the age of 14 or something, and then coming to computers nowadays with video editing on and not finding it difficult to get hold of that. I feel like it's all the same kind of thing. You learn to learn almost. Do you know what I mean? You learn how to figure something out, and once you've got the hang of that, then it's all. I mean, 20 years time, I'll be looking at a remote control and shaking my head. I'm sure of
No
it.
doubt.
We won't have remote controls then. We'll just shout at the telly and it'll change the channel, won't it?
What sort of films would you like to make?
So I made a short film. I wrote a short film and produced it, and it was directed by a film director called Tom Rosser. A single take, 3-minute rhyming monologue.
Wow.
By an actor called Sam Ricks, who's also a comedian as well. And that was my only time I've ever really seen a real film through. I've made animations before, like just here.
Yeah.
Again, rhyming monologue stuff. Again, with Sam as the voice. But that was the only time I've ever made a proper film. And it was kind of dark, kind of funny. And I'd like to continue doing stuff like that. But it took so long to do. It was so stressful to try to get, it did all right. Like I put it on, online and stuff. It got like 20,000 views in a week or something, which is a lot of eyes in one place. But there's no money in that. Do you know what I mean? It's not, and I spent quite a bit of money and a lot of time worrying about it and stuff. So it's just not really worth it in terms of use of my time. But that's what I'd like to do, really, if I wasn't doing what I'm doing.
What would it be? The same type of thing?
Well, I would like to write more rhyming monologues, because I find I've just done so many of these limericks now that rhyming I find incredibly easy, and I can switch tempo and switch meter of lines really easily to make the whole thing kind of feel a certain way and take people on a journey. And I realise that's something that I'm particularly good at now. Like I've really kind of sharpened my pencil on that one. So I'd like to take that and do a series of those. But really, I'd like to write something like a film, like an actual feature film.
Nice.
But if I'm honest with you, I don't think that's going to happen. I think I'm just going to.
Would the feature film rhyme?
Probably annoyingly in places it would. Yeah, probably annoyingly in places.
And because you're always thinking rhyme, do you think in rhyme?
Yeah, I do. There was a point where, so when I was writing the limericks first off, and I tried to write 100 in 100 days, that I would be rhyming in my dream, and I'd be conscious of that when I woke up. So that was a point where it was getting a bit bad. Nowadays, I might write 2 or 3 a week or something, and it's not quite as hectic. But there was a point where it was getting a little bit.
Because I spoke to comedians and they say that they can't have a decent conversation because they're always
thinking of
the gag
that
someone's about to say.
Yeah.
And it's like holding back a Tourette's. They're not saying that punchline is going to ruin the conversation.
Oh, it's interesting. I find with music now, when I was making music, producing music all the time, you'd listen to something and you'd be listening through the sound to the way it was put together, or thinking, wow, they've kind of sidechained the kick drum off the bass or something, and you'd be listening to that and you'd be really impressed with it. So I guess in a way, all that craft stuff does kind of ruin the experience.
This isn't going to come out for a while, but have you got anything coming up at the moment?
Well, I'm going to Belfast in about 3 weeks' time.
Nice.
For that Hit the North Festival, which is going to be great. First time on the island as well, so that'll be good. But
famous for its murals.
right, of course, yeah. I don't think they're not getting me over to do a big political one. I always wonder, because obviously I knock on some doors and try to get permission to paint walls and stuff. You do wonder about like the person who lives in the gable end of that street that faces across.
Yeah.
You know, they get a knock on the door. It's like, we'd like to paint your wall, please.
So Dan, how can anyone find you, be it website, social media?
Well, everything I do ends up on Instagram in some form. So Instagram that's just Angry Dan, no spaces or anything. My website is angrydan.com, simply. And there are pages on Twitter and bits and bobs, but I don't really do anything apart from retweet stuff on there.
And that is all my questions asked. Well, thank you for your time, mate.
No, that was an absolute pleasure. It's just what I needed. I had a day yesterday recovering from a 4-day weekend.
Well, hope you enjoyed that episode of the Ministry of Arts podcast. So we wasn't dictated to by advertisers, we decided from the offset to go ad-free, which means obviously we had to self-fund. So we set up the Ministry of Arts Patreon page. And without that support we would not be able to produce this podcast. So if you like what you hear and you're able to support the podcast, just go over to the Ministry of Arts Instagram profile. You'll find a Linktree drop-down box which will direct you straight to our Patreon page. And for the price of a cup of coffee, you can help keep us growing week by week. But if you're not able to do that, that's fine, because this content is free for everyone. But leaving a review on whichever platform you listen to your podcast, that really does help us get noticed and anyone else looking for an art podcast. Or even giving us a positive shout out on your social media. Everything is appreciated. But either way, thanks for listening, and until next week, ta-da.